Hey, if you're a recurring watcher or a new one, could you subscribe real fast? I'm inching ever closer to 30,000, and you could be part of that. Wario and the Wario Land games. A greedy, foul-tempered, kinda gross anti-hero using brute force to explore uncharted places for all the treasure he can get his grubby hands on. Wario and the Ware games. A greedy, foul-tempered, gross anti-hero who got interested in game dev and dragged a bunch of friends/acquaintances into his harebrained projects in hopes of striking it rich. Wario and Smash Brothers, mostly just generically weird and gross. While there are a few nods to his games, Smash leans so hard on making him an offbeat, exaggerated version of Mario's moveset that it doesn't embody the parts of him fans get a kick out of. But what if we could remake Wario's fighter design to fix that, by tinkering with his moves, stats, and other abilities to better embody how he's depicted in both spin-off series, without leaving one side or the other out in the cold? It won't be easy, but I think we can pull it off. So, without further ado, let's remake it! Wario's core problem in Smash is more complicated than you'd think. I've seen a lot of fans deride the crude humor, but Smash didn't make it up. That aspect of Wario has always existed, in Japan. Supplementary materials over there have always depicted him as an unhygienic slob on top of everything else, but Western advertising downplayed that side of him until the mid-2000s. They thought zeroing in on the greedy treasure-hunting anti-hero angle would appeal better to the West, and considering the 90s were the 90s, they might have been right, which threw certain fans for a loop once later games started using all of Wario's personality, even in the West, and made Smash's emphasis on the parts Western fans weren't familiar with off-putting. Basically, I think it'd work best to balance his portrayal here. Don't throw out that side of Wario, just emphasize the rest of his personality more alongside it, something even his recent outings have been doing, which means more strength, more ego, and more comical avarice alongside the bodily functions. We can also rework his alternate costumes to reference both series more overtly. Alts 1 to 4 have been left alone, including an off-brand knockoff of Mario's outfit and an under-the-radar shout-out to Jimmy T. He and Wario do go way back. But now, the fifth alt mashes reddish orange and green together in a double reference to 9V and 18V, the minds behind the fan-favorite Nintendo-themed microgames, while keeping one alt part green. And the seventh combines lemon yellow with dark blue in a nod to resident mad scientist Dr. Krygor and his robot assistant Mike. Meanwhile, the new 6th and 8th alts are based on the Wario Land games. 6 is directly inspired by his in-game color scheme in Wario Land 3, while 8 pulls from the Wario Land Shake It depiction of Captain Syrup, one of the big guy's multiple archenemies. I'm not forgetting anyone, am I? Nah. While he is getting adjusted a lot, I opted to keep Wario's fighting style intact, more or less. Uses his weird movement options to weave around opponents and poke at them using certain moves without committing too hard, until he baits out an opening, at which point he barges in with something stronger yet riskier. He'll still do this, but with new tweaks that'll make his extremes less extreme. In Ultimate, Wario's an incredible damage racker with cracked low percent combos, but inconsistent knockout power, except when he has a fully charged waft, which lets him touch of death people at nearly any percent. I want to tone down the toxic aspects here, while still making him interesting to play as, play against, or watch someone else play. To that end, how does stats change? For one, Wario's put on some weight. Well, more than usual. An extra 3 points makes him exactly the 10th heaviest character, giving him just a little more survivability that befits someone usually near the top weight classes in spin-offs. Also, he must be getting some cardio in, because his walk and initial dash are faster now. A slightly better dash and 15% better walk speed helps his micro movement and burst movement both, especially when he still has the 8th fastest airspeed with the 2nd best air acceleration, tied with Peach and Daisy. Surprisingly good air movement is a recurring thing in the Wario Land games, so it fits him. But while he'd like to claim otherwise, Wario's new upsides come with a few downsides. That cardio might just be smoke and mirrors, because his running speed is slightly worse now. Around 4% slower long-distance movement, yet better short-distance movement, is a fair trade for an already high-tier character, and it helps him feel weightier like in his games. Meanwhile, rounding out Wario's extremes means his combos have taken a small hit. Still very good at damage racking, just not insane anymore. On the bright side, most of his moves hit hard on their own. But other changes to his moveset have exaggerated a weak point he already had: lengthy end lag on most of his kit. Being left extra vulnerable if his attacks don't hit means Wario players must be careful not to get too greedy, or they'll lose the lead as often as Wario himself loses his riches. But for those who know how to spend wisely, or attack wisely, you'll find an easier time making a fortune or taking stocks than before. Now let's see Wario's actual moveset. Have the changes paid off? Opening with his most basic moves, his jab combo mixes things up from the get-go. Starts with a quicker downward punch like in Wario World, then follows it with a regular punch with his other arm, then finishes with a new third hit, a kick like the one at the end of his attack string in Super Mario 64 DS. Surprisingly high knockback makes the kick a fallback KO move at the ledge, and the first hit is a couple frames faster than before, turning what was the worst jab in the game into something serviceable. Next is a fancy WarioWare style rebrand for the move he already had. Typical Wario. Not that it's a bad thing here. While rather slow, it's surprisingly powerful and legit helpful at taking stocks. We can even make it a frame or two faster if needed. Speaking of rebrands, Wario's up tilt is mostly the same, so kinda slow but extremely combo friendly. Only difference animation-wise is he closes his hands now, as if holding a pair of form stones from his latest outing. Leave it to Wario to try and profit off an ancient tradition he just learned about. Hey, this one's new. Based on his ability to roll down slopes in the Wario Land games, he somersaults forward about a dash length and bowls over anyone in his way. No one tell DDD. This is one of Wario's new workarounds to his stubby range. A few attacks with extra burst movement and respectable power. Losing the poke means he's down a fast combo starter though. Finally, you didn't think I'd throw this out, did ya? One of Wario's signature attacks, and best finishers, is right where it should be. Could maybe make the late hits slightly bigger? Attacks with movement on them tend to have smaller hitboxes, but this one might be excessive. Now for Wario's smash attacks. And hey, that's new! A loose adaptation of his running headbutt from Wario Land 4, he suddenly leaps forward a dash length to ram into anyone in the way. While still as unwieldy and punishable as the old move, the added burst gives it actual utility for catching landings and hitting aggressive approaches. Next, Wario's up smash is inspired by the many humiliating status effects he's suffered in his games. Based on Bouncy Wario, he short hops into the air for a sudden vertical headbutt with its own burst movement. He doesn't outright turn into a spring, but it utilizes the strengths that form has. Wario can be pretty smart, he just doesn't bother putting in effort unless there's something in it for him. Rounding out the set, a move that was sorely missing. Wario gathers power into his raised fist, then punches the ground so hard it sends anyone nearby flying. This seismic shaker can hit below ledges if you're square on them, and it even has an outer sour spot that makes anyone on the ground nearby trip and fall. Up next are Wario's aerials. And come on man, no fair renaming your old moves to be trendier. Just like his up tilt, it's the same animation but with his hands closed in an attempt to mimic a certain form. It's still a weird yet surprisingly quick and lengthy combo move like always. Wario's forward air is another one I left alone. The shockingly fast held kick is too essential to his neutral to get rid of, especially when I already replaced his down tilt. Just keep the end lag and short range in mind. But now, why lean back with a weird headbutt when Wario can let his rear end do the talking? Sticking his backside backward quickly, it's a comically exaggerated version of Peach's back air with a bit of jiggle physics to make it extra ridiculous. Overall, it's a bit faster than Wario's old back air and has stronger knockback, but it doesn't reach as far. Use your air mobility to compensate. Up air is another one that needed no changing. Unique animation, fairly fast for an aerial, big hitbox, and amazing for comboing and juggling. It's weird yet effective, which still fits Wario in moderation. But his down air is completely new. Wario suddenly plummets downward butt first, dealing a powerful, non-spike hit to anyone in the way as he rebounds off them. If he hits the ground instead, he gets a landing hitbox and shakes the screen a little, followed by lengthy end lag as he shakes it off. That's gonna hurt in the morning. What about when Wario gets his hands on someone? His grab animations are the same as before, but we could make them all a frame faster. He's used to picking up and throwing stunned enemies in the Wario Land games, so grabs that aren't slow would make some sense. His new pummel is like his old one but adjusted. Instead of awkwardly poking his opponent, he aims higher and tries to forcibly jam his finger up their nose. Don't ask how it hurts fighters who don't have noses. Wario's throws got a few updates of their own. His forward throw is new, a two-handed toss with as much power as he can muster. This one's his kill throw, actively rewarding players for pushing opponents back before landing the grab. His back throw stuck around, one Wario World reference that's been here all along. We could have him spin backwards a little during the animation and fling them away with a
"Have a rotten day!"
Up throw is a variant of his old one. Instead of punching his foe upward, now he lifts them with both hands like in yet another form. Maybe that vacation rubbed off on him after all. And his new down throw brings in the last of the ones from Wario World. He hops up, spins rapidly in place, and slams the opponent head first into the ground. Deals more knockback than before, but more importantly, it's Wario's new highest damaging throw. Now, how about taunts? Wario's a big fan of those. I actually decided to keep two of them the same. Side and down are that right combination of egotistical and immature. But his up taunt is new, with Wario showing off his biceps like in a few of his games while saying one of two classic lines.
"I'm gonna win!"
Or,
"Excellent!"
helps his taunts also embody all of his personality. You've waited long enough. How can we make Wario's specials the best damn thing money can buy? Well, we start by retooling his neutral special, changing it from something generically weird to something more overtly in character, by combining Wario's greedy nature with a signature move from the most recent 15-year-old Wario Land title. On use, Wario gets an avaricious glint in his eye, and he reaches forward with both hands to grab anyone or anything immediately in front of him. If he does grab someone, mash A or B to violently shake them as hard as he can. Each shake deals a bit of damage that racks up fast, and includes a coin effect like with Mario's Super Jump Punch, literally shaking his enemies down for their money. Once you've roughed them up enough, or before they can mash out, press forward or back to chuck them away with one hand. While this may sound like a reskin of Wario's old neutral special, and it kind of is, it comes with unique upsides, like better forward reach and intangibility on his hands. While he can't eat items anymore, and can't hold the grab hitbox indefinitely, he can pick up throwable items more easily, even banana peels or gyros sitting on the ground, and can catch them right out of the air, stealing them for his own use. Greedy Grasp is a quick command grab that deals a chunk of damage while catching people shielding even when you're in midair. Plays a similar role to the move it replaces, but now it embodies a core part of Wario's personality instead of being a very loose reference to his appetite and or hypersuction. Worth mentioning that if you do grab someone in midair, Wario slowly falls while shaking them to prevent cheesy suicide KOs, and the finishing throw has less knockback than when grounded. Side Special is up next, and look, not everything needs replacing. Not only is Wario's motorcycle a linchpin of his moveset and fighting style, he has a thing for motor vehicles in both of his series. The bike does interact differently with his new neutral special. He can't eat the damn thing anymore, but instead he can destroy it quickly by shaking it. While this takes a little longer, if you destroy it this way and deal enough of the bike's total HP by shaking it, it leaves a tire behind, like in Brawl, that can be thrown twice before disappearing, and Wario automatically picks it up. This new quirk gives him access to item-based setups and combos he hasn't had available in years, as long as he has enough breathing room to destroy his bike uninterrupted, and his opponent doesn't grab the tire from him, and it gets through testing to make sure his conversions off it aren't overpowered. One special kept, one replaced, so what next? Well, Wario's Up special is a little of both. Believe it or not, this technique from Wario World is unrelated to the corkscrew in Smash despite a similar English name, but we can still use it to create a more inspired special. On use, Wario curls into a ball and rockets upward at a diagonal angle. Anyone in his flight path gets dragged along, taking multiple hits on the way up, leading into a final blow as he uncurls and swings his fists outward, dealing as much damage as the old move with a little more distance and extra knockback at the end. It's better than ever on offense, albeit a couple frames slower. But it's a bit weirder for recovery. While you can influence the angle by pressing left or right, there'll always be some forward movement, never straight up. Now based on something Wario's actually done instead of being Mario Up special but weirder, Corkscrew Conk is a quirky recovery move that stands out better. Works best on stages with walls or underside slants you can ride up, letting you vary your angle and timing to throw off edgeguard attempts. But on stages that lack those things, well, better make sure your aim is good, or that you can recover with just the bike. Now, what happened to Wario's down special? After much deliberation, yeah, I opted to keep it. Like I said, Wario's always had a crude streak in Japan, so this is just as in character as the stuff we swapped in. But we can make it more user-friendly and less polarizing. Now, Wario has an accompanying gauge on his display, showing his current level of fuel. It still builds up over time like before, and now you can track it easily instead of trying to spot how bloated Wario currently looks when you're constantly moving him around. The meter also glows once filled, at which point it slowly empties, telling you how long you have to use it before the gas passes naturally. While Wario can't eat items to get a little meter now, shaking any opponent enough times knocks loose a clove of garlic. Eating that restores a little health and gives him some gas. We can also adjust how the waft works at its strongest points. Its third and fourth levels have taken a hit to their knockback so they don't kill as stupid early, and come out a few frames later so they aren't as easy to confirm into. But in exchange, those levels have gained bigger hitboxes, making them something you can whip out more reliably when you have a read instead of allowing for touch of death setups. We can even add a dramatic slowdown to the start of the full power version, milking the absurdity for all it's worth. These changes should, hopefully, make the Wario Waft healthier for the metagame, ironically, while still being fun to use and hilarious to watch. Sometimes changing your diet just a little can go a long way, and if you're Wario, still allow you to clear the room. But what goes even bigger than that? Wario's Final Smash, which also got some updates. While the premise of swapping to a superpowered alter ego is the same, we can spice up the cinematic part. Instead of rapidly dealing a bunch of hits, now he deals a smaller number of stronger blows as the screen lingers on each for a full second. Wario, his foes, and the background slowly animate, like panels from a comic book rendered in 3D. And newly accompanying each hit is a 2D image of a random member of Wario's entourage reacting to it, ranging from Cat and Anna gasping in shock, to Orbulon fleeing in his spaceship, to Ashley nonchalantly pulling her clothes over her nose while Red hides behind her. But the final fart at the end is always accompanied by Captain Syrup, redrawn to fit the art style, looking away in disgust. Wario gets the drop on his enemies, quote, impresses his friends, and grosses out his nemesis all at once. And there, a revamped version of Wario in Smash that changes a bunch of moves, reworks his stats, and realigns his personality to better represent both of his series instead of mostly neither. Playing as him should now feel as well balanced and refined as he thinks he is, while still feeling familiar enough that anyone who already likes playing as him can make the jump no problem. Oh boy, I hope I threaded the needle with this one. Wario's two series have two different fan bases that don't overlap much, and I wanted to tap into the best parts of both without alienating either, which is why I restrained myself on a few things, like no direct transformations from Wario Land or pulling out items from different microgames. Wanted to focus on what Wario can do on his own without relying on outside props, except the bike he already uses. I did originally have him shaking people for his pummel animation, but once I realized what I could do with his neutral special, it worked better there. For the record, while I don't mind the WarioWare games, I'd also be up for Wario Land coming back somehow. Just saying, I think Way Forward could do a pretty good job with it if given the chance. And hey, if you want to see more of what I've made, check out my other content. Hard to believe this is the 10th remake already. Props to these people here for helping with this video, and to my patrons for their continued support. And now, they get to do something. Anyone currently backing me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month can vote on which of these two fighters gets remade next. Which will it be, Time and Light or Fairy Magic and Music? So, until next time, don't let Wario find out this episode ended up shorter than usual.